What's going on, everyone? Climate Data Report here with the Thursday Climate Update for Thursday, August 14th, 2023. We are continuing to watch what is going on in Libya, where the death toll from flooding rainfall, massive flooding that they have seen, is now over 11,300 people. This is just a catastrophe. This is, very sad, and apparently what we're hearing here is that the warnings, there just weren't much warnings. They weren't telling people to evacuate, and we're hearing the number of those killed could rise as high as 20,000 people. Again, this is a very sad situation, what is ongoing right now over in Libya. Look at this picture right here. You can see the rush of water. It just came through and pretty much just went through this entire area, just wiping things out. You can clearly see that the water went through there, so it's bad. And the fact they did not have enough warning. Was there any warning? It sounded like they did not have very good communication, and this is a problem. We have a lot of countries. Maybe they're not as well countries. They don't have, like here in the United States, we have a National Weather Service. We have a pretty good warning system in place. There's a lot of countries around the world that don't, and that's something that needs to be invested in. There needs to be an agency somewhere in the world, like a worldwide agency, that steps in, and that's what they do. They help these countries with warning systems. They help warn about disasters. They, jump on the media. We have the World Health Organization for health. We need something in the meteorological field where, hey, if there's a bad situation such as this, they step into the local media, and they step in and they start warning people of that country, of that city, in a country, because you know what, it's time. All right, moving on to this. National Hurricane Center, we're still tracking Lee. Lee is still a hurricane. It's at 957 millibars. Still has 85-mile-per-hour winds. It's going to drop below hurricane status probably over the next couple of days. Taking a look here at the latest track, you can see that Nova Scotia is the prime target for this, but the waves will still be felt up and down the east coast, and it's something that needs to be watched. Don't be going in the water swimming in the Atlantic Ocean right now. Now's not the time to be doing that. There's also tropical storm watches up for portions of New England because the wind field with this storm system is expanding bigger and bigger, and you will see tropical storm force winds and wind gusts across portions of New England. There could be some power outages, so it's something you're going to have to watch if you're in coastal New England. Taking a look at the satellite picture, I'm going to move myself to the left. And you can see here, here's Lee. Look how expansive the cloud field is. It's continuing to grow. There's already high clouds starting to move into portions of Maine and Nova Scotia. There's going to be a lot of rainfall in Nova Scotia. You could see upwards of 4 to 8 inches of rain, maybe localized 10 inches of rain. So, yes, that is a lot of rainfall. Let's take a look at the national hazards map. And you can see here on the national hazards map, believe it or not, your eyes are not deceiving you. Let's zoom into central Pennsylvania. Yes, Bradford, Pennsylvania. Those are frost advisories. Let's click on them. I'm going to move myself back to the right. Frost advisory is in effect from 2 a.m. to 8 a.m. Friday, with temperatures expected to go as low as 35 degrees. So yes, it's getting to be that time of year, and summer is getting ready to close out. Elsewhere across the country, again, here's those tropical storm watches and hurricane warnings that are up for portions of Nova Scotia, and then you have up here also eastern Maine, down east Maine. The rest of the country, relatively quiet at this time. We do have a couple heat advisories in South Texas, but really this is the quietest we have seen the National Hazards Map in a long time. Radar, again, not that active. We do have some showers in Colorado, New Mexico, Utah, portions of Nevada. Yes, Lake Mead continues to fill up a little bit more, which is really good. And there's some showers and thunderstorms in Georgia, South Carolina, and Florida. Also down in Louisiana and Texas, but again, nothing terribly alarming. And the air qualities across the country today are really not all that bad. We're seeing greens in the Northeast, something we haven't seen in a while. Minnesota, Iowa, A little yellow for you. There's still some yellows in the south as well. And we're also watching a couple wildfire spots, which is causing some bad air quality out in the west coast. And Canada, for you, yes, you do have some bad air qualities in western Canada. All right, take a look at the Storm Prediction Center. No watches. Haven't been able to say that in a while. Marginal risk of severe weather in Texas and portions of New Mexico today. And tomorrow, pretty much the same. Although tomorrow, southern Colorado, Kansas, and portions of Oklahoma get included. Again, it's not that big of a threat tomorrow. Isolated wind and hail threat. I don't think it's going to go up to a slight risk, but we'll see what happens. All right, taking a look at the Weather Prediction Center, there are slight risks of excessive rainfall, really small areas, and they're mainly in the south central region. Again, if you recall, Texas actually does need the rainfall, so this is actually some good news for Texas. And there's a slight risk of excessive rainfall on Saturday for portions of Maine, which is from Hurricane Lee, where you could see a few inches of rainfall from this system. All right, let's take a look at the GFS here. Here's Lee out in the Atlantic. You can see it's passing Bermuda. Bermuda is getting tropical storm conditions right now, and you can see the GFS here. It does try to move this into Maine, so I mean somewhere between Nova Scotia and Maine. But let's actually shift models. You can see here the Canadian model's a little bit further east, and the European, which has continuously been west for some reason. On some runs have been ridiculous. European has not done so well with the storm system, but it's also a little bit further west. So somewhere in between down East Maine and Nova Scotia is where the landfall of Lee is going to be. And let's take a look at precipitation amounts here. I mean, down East Maine, you could see 2 to 4 inches of rain, maybe isolated 5 inches of rain. Your gust, you could have hurricane force gusts still if it maintains itself, which quite frankly at this point I don't think it's going to remain a hurricane, but you could definitely see some hurricane force gust in that area. And let's just take a look at the long range precipitation. You can see here, not a very active picture. I mean, we're out here to Thursday of next week, and okay, there's a few precipitation areas, but places west of where Lee's going to hit this weekend, you're in for a spectacular weekend. The West Coast, not all that bad. Let's take a look at temperatures out on the West Coast, shall we? Look at this. I mean, yes, you're still going to have some heat, but nothing like we saw earlier in the summer. So, overall, a quiet picture across the country. Rain where there needs to be rain, and it's some good news. Here's the rainfall amounts. Look at this. The plains. You need rain here. This is perfect. Still a little bit of a wet pattern in Florida. That's something we'll have to keep an eye on. There could be maybe some isolated flash flood threats, although I'm not terribly concerned. And let's take a look at the latest drought monitor. We have to refresh this, and you can see, like I just said, the central region, you still do need rainfall. And you could do with some rain in the upper Midwest as well, but right now I'm not seeing anything major for you yet. East Coast, drought concerns are not terrible at the moment. Starting to watch the Mid-Atlantic fill in a little bit more. We'll have to see how that progresses because, like I just showed you here, let's go back to the precipitation days 1 through 7. Not much precipitation there, though places like New England, back in through the northern Mid-Atlantic, like Pennsylvania and New Jersey, you don't need any more rainfall right now. We had plenty of rainfall here over the past weekend. 6 to 10 day temperature outlook. Slightly above average in the Great Lakes, slightly above average in the South, but nothing terribly crazy. Below average in the West Coast. That's a big change. And 8 to 14 days. Below average in the West Coast. Not certain I agree with this for the Northeast. We'll have to watch. I think this may be a little bit overdone on the above average temperatures, but nonetheless, it is something to watch. Precipitation, below average in the Northeast. The only exception to this is going to be down East Maine. So we'll have to keep an eye on this. And look at this, above average in the plains. So the areas that are still in the drought, guess what? You're going to get some relief. The Four Corners region, the southern portion of that, Arizona and New Mexico, dry for you. Above average precipitation in Florida. And take a look at this, 8 to 14 days. You can see above average precipitation from the Pacific Northwest through the plains like the Dakotas. You're going to see above average precipitation. And just slightly above average in the Carolinas, Atlanta, Georgia, and below average precipitation again in the Northeast. All right, so the key takeaway, Lee, The biggest effects for the United States are going to be the waves on the coast, and then you're going to see some hurricane force wind gusts in down East Maine, even Portland, Maine. You could see some rain from the system. Boston, you'll see some wind, but that's going to be about it for you, and maybe perhaps a cloudy day on Saturday. The rest of the country, it's looking relatively quiet right now with, again, some rain where it's needed in places like Dallas, Texas, Austin, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, Kansas. Maybe you'll see a little bit of precipitation down the line. Then that shifts to the northern plains. So that's good news for the drought areas. And that's it. That's all I have for today. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more content like this, subscribe to my channel down below. And if you know anyone that would enjoy seeing this content, by all means, share this with them. We'll have another climate update again in the near future. Until then, I'll see you all again next time, and have a great evening. Thanks for watching.